And the whole foundation of this conversation today has been about the cinema experience. And I'm going to ask you now, what do you think are some of the pros and cons of going to a cinema nowadays? Obviously, there's a few obvious ones. Obviously, one of the pros would be, watching a movie on the big screen. Some of the cons may be like, there's annoying people in the back seat sort of thing. But I'm interested to hear from you. What do you think are some of the pros and cons of the cinema going experience as of today?
Okay, well, I'll start with the cons first. I just think that people... I think there's a lack of etiquette that is being drawn attention to. I think that for me, if somebody is still on their phone or is still talking as soon as the movie studio logo comes on, I'm already having a fit. And I think that a lot of people are confusing the etiquette of, well, it's not even etiquette at home. People are treating going to the cinema almost like watching a movie at home. Yes,
I agree.
I think there's some overlaps. Yeah, I hate it as well because there is some decor. There is some, as I said, etiquette that you abide by. There is a social contract, an unwritten. Well, I'm not sure if it's unwritten, but there is a social contract that is essentially created when you go to the cinema. In the same way, there is things that you do and don't do when going out in public. You are in public. You are among the people. You are, it's a communal experience. You're not at home. So when you go to the cinema, just because it goes down and everything is black, does not mean you are cut off from the people who are next to you. I think that there needs to be a bit more of an emphasis on theater etiquette going forward. What else? I think there is certainly some upkeep in terms of how cinemas are kept clean and all that.
I 100% agree. I give lots of criticism to certain theaters because they don't do that. They have sticky seats or sticky floors, or the seats are not comfortable at all. I'm on the same page. I think there needs to be a better upkeep with the facilities.
Yeah, and I mean, you could argue also just sort of they only have a certain amount of time between sort of...
Don't care.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's only a certain amount of time between when the last movie ends and then the next movie, begins with people walking in and all that.
It's not a complicated job. Get cleaners in, clean in and out, and then next person comes in.
Yeah, and even if there is a problem, with that, put them through a training course or something like that. That they can attend. In order to get it cleaner and stuff like that, because it is part of their job to clean, and may as well do an adequate job of it. So yeah, I that's definitely one of them. I think that, and something else that we haven't really touched upon is, especially for a lot of filmmakers who prefer film over digital and stuff like that, I think that, and I guess it kind of falls under, in terms of presentation for TV as well. I really love going to, say, Gilmore or going to Palace Cinema, and they're actually showing it in film. There is, and maybe it's nostalgia talk, I don't know, but I do think that there is something so fascinating about the different presentations of a movie at the cinema.
I think it'd be nice if more theaters had that option. It's just one of those sad realities that I feel like because cinemas have been struggling a lot recently, that we don't get more of that. But I think, especially if a lot more of the mainstream theaters had that extra option, whether maybe it's just one cinema that one of their specific cinemas that does it, I think that would still be cool. But because I think as of right now, a lot of the mainstream ones just have their normal default big screen
digital,
experience.
Yeah.
And then you have very niche specific theaters that only do stuff like that.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think that it has become very niche. Here in Brisbane, where do you go, to see film projected, on celluloid? At Palace Cinema, at Goma, at the very... It's there. I can't think. I think the only theatre in the country, I think, that actually has that Event Cinemas actually has a film projector, I believe, is George Street in Sydney.
Wow.
Yeah, and because I think they did that roadshows thing that Tarantino did with The Hateful Eight, shown it in, I think it was 70 mil. They actually showed it at George Street back when they were doing that roadshow thing. I think it was like the only location in Australia that actually did that. So, I mean, that's for me. I know a lot of people don't give a shit about, how a film is projected, but it is a very small. It's a very small thing that does make a big impact in terms of like how you present the film. Because, look, for some people, you can present a film just in any way and they'll be fine, but then you get to say if it's bad sound or anything like that, people get up in arms, and if it sounds drowned out or anything like that. Yeah, so definitely.
Well, I'll jump in here. I think the movie-going experience needs to be of the highest quality, because I agree. When you go to a theater and you have an uncomfortable seat, or the screen has like a mark on it, or there's a bit of, grime on stuff on the screen, or there's a speaker that's not working properly, it all takes you out of the movie-going experience. And one of the most important things of when you're watching a movie or a TV show or any type of screen story is that once you're watching it, and if the story is good, you get immersed within it, you get immersed within the world, you are enjoying the characters because you're going on the journey with them. And it's almost like a magical spell. You almost get hypnotized in a way. You kind of get sucked into it. And when you are in a theater and someone kicks the back of your seat, or they're on their phone and that light comes up and it just snaps you out of it, even if it's like a very brief moment, those little moments can really detract from that movie-going experience. So I agree. I think the etiquette needs to definitely improve from a lot of people, because I have noticed that when I went and saw Wonder Woman 1984, there was a woman on her phone for basically like 75% of that movie. And even worse, she was having her camera open. She was recording parts of the movie. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, why? You're just distracting me, because she was right in front of me, right? And
also, you're committing a crime.
Well, exactly right. Again, I don't know what the purposes of that recording was, but regardless, you shouldn't be doing that anyway.
Yeah.
So that was annoying. And I agree. I think etiquette from the people within that experience, like you said, I think it's an unspoken rule, but just come on, people. I think it's fair enough, because when you're in that movie-going experience, you just want to get immersed in the story and kind of enjoy it for what it is. You don't want to be thinking about the people behind you, or like being in a seat that's uncomfortable, all that type of stuff. And I also agree that there are certain things when you're watching a movie that you need to be like, we're watching a movie right now. We're not at home having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I've had many times when, we're watching a movie on the big screen and then there'll be someone behind me giving a commentary or having a chat with their friends. I'm like, come on, man. I'm just trying to watch this movie.
It depends on the type of movie. I remember going to see The Meg, which is not a good movie, but I had the best time watching it with my friends, and just... It wasn't heckling the movie, but it was just sort of like, yes, they're about to do that stupid thing, and I love it.
Okay, let me make a key distinction then, because I agree, because there's nothing wrong with reacting to a movie and having a natural, loud emotion towards it, whether it be laughter or cringe or horror or whatever it is, and making sometimes those satirical heckling type moments. That's all fine. It's just when it's irrelevant or not related to the movie-going experience. So like... for example, when I went and saw Jurassic World, there was a bunch of high schoolers behind me, and they're just talking about like high school shit during the movie, and I'm like, come on, dudes! I'm just like, I'm trying to watch this movie, and you're distracting me. I didn't enjoy that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but that's a whole different story.
Have you ever gone to the cinema to see The Room?
I haven't. Well, I watched it just down at Griffith in the QC on the big screen there. That was the very first time I watched it.
Go to, I think they're doing it at New Farm, every on a Friday of the 9th, I think it is, every single month. Go do that. I've been twice. It is so much fun.
I can imagine, because that is a bloody strange movie.
Yeah, it
has earned the title of the best worst movie ever made.
But I'm saying that simply because that is a different etiquette altogether. Because because in regards to that, everybody knows what you can and can't do during that. You can throw spoons at it. You can provide commentary. You can get up, climb all over the seats and stuff like that. We all know that is an agreed upon thing during that movie because it's a cult film.
Of course.
But in case of that movie over there, Avengers Endgame, during that big third act, I'm just going to say the word portals.
Yes.
In case you have not seen the second highest grossing movie of all time, I wanted to just stand up out of my seat and just just cheer and give everyone a high five.
100%.
Yes, because of like,
100%.
yeah. But any other movie that's like that, I appreciate that they have that enthusiasm.
Well, it's funny you mention that, and I think that's a very key point. And I want to make sure that I'm making myself quite clear, is that I don't expect people to come into a movie and just be silent the whole time and not react. There are certain movies that elicit that key emotion out of you. Avengers Endgame is a great example of that because, you know, this is a whole separate debate that we won't get into just now, but Martin Scorsese liked to compare the Marvel movies to like theme parks and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of people took offense to that, but I think he's dead right. I think the Marvel
enjoy
movies,
theme park rides.
Exactly. I think the Marvel movies do such a great job of getting a collective community to get together and eliciting a response from them, because Avengers Endgame and even Infinity War with the moment with Thor, like, those moments in Endgame, the portals moment, and when Captain America lists Mjolnir, like there are those key moments that make the fans go absolutely wild inside the theater, and you get those crazy responses where people are screaming, just that raw excitement and emotion, and those type of reactions are awesome. I know when I saw Avengers Endgame at the very premiere experience, I was the exact same. I had tears of joy, tears of sadness, and I was fist pumping in the air.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. I agree. When a movie elicits a key emotion out of you that's earned, 100% worth it. It's just in all those moments that are not relevant to the movie that I take issue with. Some of the pros, like what's a specific what's a specific pro that you would give to the cinema going experience, even though we already have touched on a few?
I mean, it's
like, what's that one key pro for the cinema experience that you're like, when I go to the theater, I always expect this, and if I get it, I'm super satisfied?
I mean, just show me something I haven't seen before. Or something that just sort of like is very much akin to sort of like, give me something that I didn't know I needed.
One of my big pros for the cinema experience is, obviously you mentioned it, the story and being able to give you that emotion of like, I've not seen this before, this is profound. But to me, another big thing that I really love about the theater going experience is obviously the big screen, but also the sound system.
Yeah.
When you're in a good theater that has a great sound system, and you just kind of get immersed within the world that it's showcasing, and even little things like when the movie logos at the start come up. Some studios are really creative with the way they kind of set the tone for the movie that you're about to watch through the credits at the beginning. One of the best example, I would say the best example of this is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Where the opening logos and stuff that they set up, it's so graphic and it's so disorientating the way it shows the logos, because it's like going between the different filters of like the comic booky feel versus like the live action feel. Like you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that opening sequence, right, with the logos, it's very disorientating. The music is obviously really loud, and it does that in order to kind of like get your brain in the right mindset for it to be like you're watching a very specific type of animation that really helps you kind of get ready for it, because that movie animation wise is brilliant. It's one of the best animated movies ever made, I think. But I think that opening sequence with those intros really sets the stage for the movie you're about to watch. And again, that's obviously, of course, thanks to the animation, but also the sound design. And I remember watching that on the big screen for the first time and just being like, wow, this is awesome. Just like getting into that feeling. And then when they have that thumping noise of, approved by the Comics Association, just so cool.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, I think, is really awesome when you can make use of the cinema mixing and that cinema feel, and just have these sounds going all the way, especially like when helicopters fly over you, or something's happening behind you in a horror movie that gives you that extra fear. Just stuff like that is just amazing.
You often think it's just sort of like, oh, there's actually somebody like who's actually there. Just sort of like, oh, there's something going up there. No, it's actually part of the sound system. But I'm not sure if I should say I'm going to slightly push back on this. First time I saw Into the Spider-Verse, and it's interesting that you actually mentioned just that, the logo and stuff like that. That was actually the point where I was just sort of like, okay, what am I in for? Because admittedly at the time, I was exhausted with work. It was like 8:30 at night, but I actually thought to myself, like, this is kind of an assault on the senses.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just sort of like...
I think it's deliberately so.
No.
Yeah.
It's deliberately. I agree with that. But for me, it was just sort of like, this is really loud. And there comes a point where just sort of like, yes, it's loud, but like just don't make my eardrums burst, you know? And that's like one of those movies where I was just sort of like, this is really loud. Can someone turn this down? The last time that happened to me, I think it was Tenet. And funnily enough, I saw it on film. The first time I saw it, I was just sort of like, this is really loud. And I'm not just talking about like, you know, like the dialogue's muffled and stuff like that, which it is.
Yes.
But it's just sort of like, can they turn it down a notch a bit? Because it's just sort of like when it becomes an irritant, that's when I just go like, it's just like when it's pushing back against me. And also like the problem I had with Into the Spider-Verse the first time I saw it was same problem that I kind of have with the Lego movies is just sort of like it is so frenetic in pace and style. It just sort of like my retinas are going to burn. It's just sort of like there's just so much going on and not being able to keep up with it and all that. That's sort of like me personally, I don't always gravitate towards animation when it's done right. Once again, going back, if it's able to make me feel. Inside Out, I cry every single time when I watch that movie. And I love that movie. But then you get some other movies where it's just sort of like, yeah, it's, you know, fine. And I'm talking specifically with animation. So Into the Spider-Verse was one of those ones where it just sort of like, I think it took me like another viewing for me I watched it, you know, the second time at home and it was just like, okay, I get it. Right.
It's funny you mention that. And this is again why I love movies is because art is subjective and everyone interprets things differently. What I really loved about that movie, that frenetic style, you dislike. And I think that's what's so good about, you know, art in that way is that how it affects people differently.
Yeah.
And obviously it's great when there's a consensus one way or the other, when everyone loves something, or sometimes when everyone hates something, that can kind of be fun as well. But I think that's what makes the movie-going experience so entertaining is because everyone's coming together to have this collective experience with a community, and because we want to enjoy a story as a collective. And I think that's one of the best things that the cinema going experience really does, is it provides that sense of community. And when you're telling a really great story that has great characters that can really draw you in, and whether it's an educational movie that kind of says something about a specific topic or something, or whether it's a movie that, you know, shares something social or political or sometimes cultural, are movies, you know, that try and share or try and change something within society, that try and make a movement. Stuff like that is sometimes interesting. But at the end of the day, I think movies are always trying to provide a sense of escapism for people. And I think the entertainment factor is obviously a key factor. But at the end of the day, as long as the movie is of high quality from a technical perspective, and then it has great characters and a good story, I think then that's a great recipe for success.
I just thought of this, like, do you ever get that sensation while you're watching a movie that, like, yes, it is a community experience, but, like, you feel this sense of togetherness?
Yes.
Do you, like, you feel just sort of like, because there are times where just, like, you feel like an individual at the cinema and stuff like that, but when you feel like when people are laughing or something like that, or you just feel like you're all, you know, you're all in this, you know, and I think that's, I mean, I guess you could have that, you know, at home when you're like, you know, you have friends or family over to watch, you know, movie and all that. I remember when I invited all my friends to come over and watch the new Borat movie, and it was just sort of like, I don't think I would have enjoyed that much if I just watched it by myself. But to watch it with strangers, like, this is like the thing that, like, the only thing that we have, like, when you go to cinema, the only thing that we have in common is that we're about to watch, you know, the same thing, and we're facing the same way. That's literally, you know, the only thing that, you know, we have in common that we know of. But but what we're going to be doing is bonding over the enjoyment or it depends, you know, how you react to the movie. It's almost a test on just sort of like, you know, are we going to band together and we're just going to be enraptured, you know, in this movie? And MCU movies, that, you know, they do that. They certainly do that.
I was to say, I've had plenty of those experiences of interacting with a crowd, all collectively watching the same thing, and we all respond the same way, whether it's laughter or sadness or whatnot. And I think the best movies elicit those emotions out of you. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I think most movies, you know, have a little flaw here or there. But at the end of the day, if you can leave the theater saying, I had a bloody good time, money well spent, that's what you want.